Alright, here we go, I guess. Hello everyone and welcome back. It's your host Michelle, aka Chat-Mort, and thank you so much for turning once again to my humble little channel. This is not going to be a comprehensive video recounting everything that has happened up to this point in regard to this situation. This is simply my opinions on something that has been covered a multitude of times already by people who are a lot more succinct and better at researching than I am. I just wanted to voice my opinions on this case, why I'm so fed up with so many aspects of this case, and make a couple arguments that I've heard very few people, if anybody, make, and just kind of vent. And then I don't want to talk about this situation anymore because it's pretty discouraging overall. And I suppose, for posterity's sake, I should say that this video is going to be about the Onision/Shiloh situation, and the fact that it has become a Shiloh situation as much as it has an Onision one should tell you everything you need to know about why I am discouraged. Watching this unfold has been fascinating. From the get-go, I want to mention that I still don't know if I believe that any kind of real FBI investigation is even going on. Obviously, they've got a file on everything that's been reported to them, but I've seen several videos with pretty compelling arguments that have more or less convinced me that nothing is going to come of this in regard to any kind of criminal trial. I will link those videos, of course, in the description up here, and I highly recommend that you look into them as well. Best case scenario, Greg's wife might get in legal trouble for some of the things she's done. And no, I don't care about misgendering an egomaniac predator. I've always thought she decided to transition as an extra layer of victimhood and protection for any scrutiny that would arise due to her getting involved in all of Greg's bullshit. If you add up the amount of time in Chris Hansen's live streams alone spent tiptoeing around pronouns and apologizing for trying to explain what she identified as what time, you can see exactly how effective this strategy has been. If you go through 2 or 3 name and pronoun changes, you've just lost tens of thousands of boomers and less liberal, progressive-oriented millennials who otherwise would have been very invested in and capable of following along with this case. And even if that was just an incredibly lucky side effect, preserving the feelings of a serial manipulator and groomer is not at the top of my priority list. Whatever was going to happen after Greg's child fell out of that second-story window and sustained permanent brain damage either has happened already or is already happening, independent of the outrage the internet flew into when we came across the police reports. Oh, and every one of you who posted or shared the unredacted police reports and has been circulating those documents about all of Greg's children's name changes, congratulations! You are responsible for the violations of privacy and harassment those poor children are going to endure for their entire lives, on top of the trauma of being Greg and Kai's children. I hope you're proud of yourselves. We know that Chris Hansen is essentially monetizing this whole situation for views and super chats. He's not in law enforcement. He's a reality TV star who interviewed and/or interrogated predators after his team researched and set those people up. Who is his team now? A man-baby who rampaged all over YouTube and single-handedly decimated the entire amateur to catch a predator genre that used to exist here? That's not how you want to come out on top of a YouTube genre. If your brat of an assistant has to false copyright claim everybody else out of a career in order for you to dominate any specific field, there's something very wrong with how you and your associates conduct business. Don't forget that it took Vince multiple times of doing this for Chris to actually fire him, for a lot of scrutiny to actually accumulate for Chris to finally fire him. Far too many instances of this behavior to give Chris the benefit of the doubt and just call him an ignorant, tech-illiterate boomer who didn't realize how much damage Vince was doing to people. Again, I have linked some videos that prove this to me beyond a shadow of a doubt. I really wanted to give Chris the benefit of the doubt here. Hell, he calls all these people streamers. He thinks the only thing you do on YouTube is streaming. He's like my boomer stepdad who calls what I do blogging and asks how it's going. But there's just too much evidence that he put off addressing this until it began to affect his own PR for me to give him that benefit of the doubt. Far too much. Hansen has been in trouble for debt and has been trying to become relevant on this platform and on the internet in general for quite some time now. He did not come on this platform to stop predators. He came here to make money. The lawyer he's been consulting and putting on his channel as an expert on this is accused of fraud and serious allegations of sexual harassment and assault himself, so the experts he's consulting on this issue are a little less than credible on the topic. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely think what Hansen is doing is going to have a positive effect. The government is incredibly slow and inefficient at catching and stopping these monsters. It usually takes them over a decade to stop somebody who is creating, sharing, or soliciting CP. That's an entire decade for monsters to be getting off to unspeakable trauma. That's an entire decade for them to be tricking and blackmailing minors into sending them content that will be circulated for the rest of the victims' lives. Those victims, the ones that survive what they're put through, have to walk about the rest of their lives knowing that somebody is gaining pleasure from their unspeakable, nearly psyche-destroying trauma. They have to walk around not knowing if they're being recognized by monsters who took satisfaction in that. That is entirely too much time for these human embodiments of evil to be going around preying on and destroying innocent lives. The government is completely inefficient and ineffective at stopping predators. The most effective method of stopping these scumbags is fear. What Anxiety War, or Zach Swears, and to a lesser extent Chris Hansen are doing scares the shit out of these monsters, and that is the deterrent that's going to keep them from offending. Not some overworked, understaffed government office that compiles evidence on you for up to 14 years before attempting to arrest and prosecute you. The other problem is that many of the people who do this are elites. No more funds or resources are ever going to be allocated to stopping these people, because an uncomfortable number of those investigations would lead to the doorsteps of Hollywood elites, politicians, and prominent media members. In that regard, I am glad that Chris Hansen is doing what he's doing. Despite him transparently profiting off of covering this story, he's still sending a resounding message to people like Onision, and the victims having the courage to come forward will embolden others to speak out about the abuse they've endured. The problem is that this may only motivate these people to be more discreet. In the case of Greg and Kai, as many people have pointed out, turning this into a show to get millions of views out of it is only going to alert them to the fact that they need to cover their tracks and destroy any evidence that they may have remaining. The victims are on a publicly broadcasted live stream disclosing these details for super chats instead of talking to an investigator or some kind of forensic psychologist. Hansen making this into reality TV, going so far as to fly across the country to bang on Greg's door with a camera crew for YouTube views, is only going to sabotage any criminal investigation on Onision that has been in progress. Add that to the fact that Sarah, one of the girls Greg and Kai abused, has been tweeting about finding out that the laptop she bought from Kai that had alleged evidence of this child abuse on it that she gave to Hansen and his assistant somehow never made it to the FBI and has instead been sitting in the assistant's apartment for months, and I have no faith at all that this investigation is being carried out the right way. I was explaining all of this to one of my good friends, and I will not repeat his reaction, but he had a very interesting thought on just what kind of person accepts a laptop full of child abuse evidence under the pretense of giving it to the FBI and then keeps it in their apartment for months. I'm not going to say I agree with him, that this is one of those situations like somebody working for the FBI so they can view that stuff legally. But it's a very compelling gut reaction from someone hearing all of this for the first time. Now, the stuff about Shiloh. My mind is still completely blown on this. From the first interview Shiloh did with Chris Hansen, something about her seemed off to me, but I couldn't put my finger on what it was. I have admittedly watched his streams with her multiple times for their entertainment value alone. She's a captivating speaker and has this commanding presence that just conveys to you that she's an important individual. Maybe it was the language and framing she used to depict herself as some kind of savior and hero, but at the time, that's essentially what she was. She overcame horrific abuse and went through things that would damage even the strongest person psychologically. And she was the first victim of Greg's to come forth, as well as the first one chronologically to have been a victim of the abuse, so it makes sense for her to take something of a leadership role among his more recent younger victims. But this doesn't appear to have happened organically anymore at all. In my opinion, a very lay-person-y, non-licensed psychologist-y opinion, this case is proof that even a narcissist can be victimized and abused by a narcissist. I don't know if she picked up this way of reasoning from Greg and being so significantly psychologically impacted by him. I don't know if you just need to have some of that to be a star in the first place, and her agents and managers and whoever saw that quality in her and decided to make her into a singer. I don't know if this is a result of all the therapy she's had since escaping Greg failing her spectacularly by only focusing on what was done to her and not how she needs to learn and grow from this if she ever wants to recover. recover. Hell, maybe the popular Tumblr mentality of perpetual victimhood, never acknowledging your faults and blaming everything bad that ever happens to you on other people had a role in this. This is certainly a textbook example of how that culture and mentality can absolutely destroy people's lives by forcing them into a permanent victim role. I have friends who think what Shiloh is doing is actually worse than what Greg has done. While I wouldn't go that far, I understand why people feel that way. You can recover from grooming and abuse. You should never have to endure it in the first place, but you can heal, grow, and overcome that kind of trauma to live a happy, fulfilling life. Shiloh is threatening people by telling them she's finding out where they live. They're lucky her mafia dad is dead. The dad that she told Chris Hansen in a livestream, by the way, intended to kill Onision, and telling people to eliminate themselves. You can recover from emotional and sexual abuse. You cannot recover from being killed by a mafia member or committing suicide. Are her reckless sociopathic episodes of lashing out, her slander, and sicking her entire Twitter audience on people through blatant targeted harassment as calculated and insidious as Greg and Kai's grooming of young women? No. But I absolutely get why some people think she's become just as bad as them, if not worse. Shiloh truly believes she can do no wrong. When she is asked valid questions that need to be addressed and answered in order to protect the integrity of this investigation, she slanders the people asking them by attaching the hashtag deplatform predators to tweets about them and smearing them as doxers and harassers and creeps. She wrongfully characterizes people's criticism as targeted harassment while explicitly instructing her Twitter audience to engage in targeted harassment against them. And when it's resoundingly obvious that she was wrong and owes somebody an apology, she deletes the tweets she needs to apologize for, posts these vague, poetic statements about how she's a flawed human being and makes mistakes too, before doubling down and saying that the people she attacked are still the ones in the wrong. She attempts to divert attention from her malicious behavior by reminding everyone that she has PTSD and is a survivor of horrific sexual and psychological abuse. So anyone who disagrees with her, ever, in her mind, is guilty of re-victimizing her. Then she accuses everyone who is critical of her atrocious behavior of being guilty of diverting attention from this case against Onision. And calling this a case is laughable, because this is nothing more than reality TV for a bunch of lazy people to get in a tizzy about, so they can feel self-righteous and pretend they're actually doing something constructive to help combat sexual predators and grooming of children. Shiloh, if you think that being a victim of sexual abuse excuses everything you do after that trauma, you're arguing that everything Kai did to your girls is okay. You do realize that most sexual predators were preyed on themselves as children, right? And if criticizing the decisions and behaviors of 19-year-olds is predatory, as you asserted, by your logic, people calling for the FBI to look into Kai allegedly soliciting and possessing CP makes those people creeps for being critical of the behavior of a 19-year-old girl. It sounds like you disagree with the only bit of evidence that could possibly have any legal ramifications for Onision. If anyone is guilty of distracting the public from Greg's guilt, it's Shiloh. If anyone is capable of planting doubt in people's minds as to the authenticity of the accusations against Greg, it's Shiloh. If there's anyone out there with the capability of burying and drowning out the voices of these women who were victimized and are seeking some semblance of justice, it's Shiloh. The way she manipulates the narrative and believes she's truly in the right no matter what is so much like Onision, it's insane. The way she has absorbed these traumatized young women into her own persona and narrative to bolster her popularity and authority is so similar to the way Onision treated her, it is unbelievable. She has dominated these women and designated herself their spokesperson to the point where it doesn't seem like they even feel like they have a right to challenge her. Even now, when it's clear that she's destroying the integrity of this investigation and any hope of justice for them. And they should be scared. She knows every detail about their shame, their trauma. She has groomed them to trust her with everything. And they've seen exactly what she does to people who even tactfully ask questions. What does it say about Shiloh that her ridiculous behavior has actually caused the remaining few Onision cultists to crawl back out of the woodwork and now feel emboldened to publicly defend him again? It would have been so easy for this woman to become a figurehead of the Me Too movement, one that could largely repair the movement's reputation after so many women within it have been exposed to be willing to destroy the credibility of victims to slander and ruin the lives of men they don't like. All she had to do was not slander and threaten people's lives on Twitter. 2 months ago, any publisher would have jumped at the chance to pair her with a ghostwriter and get stacks of some kind of autobiography from her on the front tables at Barnes & Noble. She could be well on her way right now to becoming a professional motivational speaker and educator. Schools, women's groups, talk shows, a ton of different venues would pay good money to have her come and educate young women on the warning signs of grooming and predators. She could be saving tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of lives from the kind of abuse that alters your life forever. And she would be in incredibly high demand too. She's a young adult in her early 20s who's a songwriter, a platinum-selling singer, and her abuser is a YouTube celebrity. There's no one more relevant that kids would want to listen to. Hell, in a year or two, I could see her giving the opening speech at a women's march. At the very least, she could have been instrumental in the takedown of an absolute monster and the healing and vindication of the young women who have been deeply traumatized by him. And instead, she's almost solely responsible for the anti-O movement morphing from the entire internet into an irrational tiny lynch mob that people see as just as bad as Onision's remaining cultists. That is nothing short of tragic. I'd also like to take a moment to mention how scummy it is that a bunch of YouTubers who have been accused of similar, if not just as bad things, have all wormed their way into this little investigation to, sadly, in a motherly fashion, shake their heads at Onision and wag their fingers at him, as if it's somehow stunning and brave to condemn a disgusting person like him. One who is the internet's most profitable punching bag right now. It blows my mind that all you have to do is call an incredibly bad person a bad person and pop up every 30 minutes or so in Chris Hansen's live streams with 3-sentence little things about WTF, he's creepy and gross and shady, and a bunch of busybody slacktivists will treat you like you just solved poverty in Africa. Looking down on someone as revolting as Onision is not courageous. Now that I'm thinking about it, the fact that these people are treated like heroes for such transparent, slimy grifting explains exactly why thousands of people run to Chris Hansen to turn horrible abuse into reality TV before urging the victims to go to law enforcement. When you type I read or I read into YouTube's search bar, the second autocomplete option should not be Onision's book. When you search for it, you shouldn't get thousands upon thousands of results. I'm not saying that some of these videos picking apart Onision's ridiculous writing and behavior and calling it cringe aren't well made and weren't done with good intentions. I don't blame any one of these creators specifically for this phenomenon. As I said on Twitter, the issue is the oversaturation of these videos, and the fact that the benefit of any meaningful or quality criticism is far outweighed by how relevant this genre keeps Onision. I have no idea what the point of this video is. If there is one, it's probably that everyone is in the wrong here. This story epitomizes that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Or maybe it's more accurate to say that the road to hell is paved with sort of mediocre, kind of shitty, kind of slimy intentions, from a bunch of people who want to feel like they're doing something constructive to stop bad people while still sitting in their living rooms and at most giving super chats to a reality TV star on YouTube. This story should also serve as a serious warning that us, the public, the subscriber end of YouTube, the internet in general, is still incredibly dangerously naive about assigning good guy and bad guy status to people. Nobody is above criticism. Everyone has a right to ask questions, and you cannot take someone's side unquestioningly just because the person they're opposing is horrible. And also, a ton of people will jump on a bandwagon to feel like part of a movement, and even when that movement does very little good before sputtering out, they'll walk away with their heads held high, as if they saved a bunch of abused children with their bare hands, and wait for the next pseudo-righteous movement to come along for them to live stream into their living rooms. Again, thank you guys so much for watching. I had to vent this stuff. I couldn't take it anymore. And I have linked all the much better, more coherent quality videos on this topic. The fact that Toad McKinley came out with a video today, the day that I'm recording this, basically means that everything that could be said succinctly and that needs to be said has been. He made a couple points I hadn't heard anybody else say before now, and I'm really, really glad somebody with some influence who's very well-spoken said them. Stay safe out there. Please do everything within your power to protect yourself and educate young people on the internet on how to actually avoid sexual predators and grooming like this. People need to become much more aware of the dangerous influence that incredibly popular YouTubers and other internet celebrities have. And unfortunately, I don't think this case has done anywhere near as much as it could have to raise awareness and act as a cautionary tale to protect young women and young men and young dudes of all teenages, whatever you identify as. It's just really, really sad that something that could have been such an important cautionary tale, something that could have been such a pedestal and such an encouragement for victims who needed the courage and inspiration from other women to come forward. It's just so sad that it has been completely diverted into this dumpster fire. It really is. Thank you guys so much for watching. It means the world to me. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you feel so compelled. If not, understandable. And I will see you guys again soon. Bye.